It was almost midnight when the city outside finally began to quiet down, but inside the old apartment on Riverstone Lane, the noise was only starting to rise, the kind of noise that wasn't made of sound, but of thoughts, secrets, and the heavy weight of choices left unspoken. Eleanor Hartley stood near the window, looking down at the shimmering streetlights, as if they could offer answers she had been avoiding for months. 42 years old, a respected counsellor at Westbrook Community Centre, known for helping lost strangers find clarity, she had somehow forgotten how to do it for herself. Life had become a quiet routine, a marriage that looked perfect in pictures but felt hollow in real time, and a loneliness she had learned to hide even from herself. Her husband, Daniel, a well-known architect, had once been the fire of her life. But somewhere between endless meetings, late-night office calls, and his growing distance, Eleanor had begun to feel like a shadow in her own home. Daniel wasn't cruel, he wasn't unkind, he was simply gone, even when he was there. And loneliness, when stretched over years, becomes something dangerous. It starts looking for a place to rest. That place arrived in the form of Adrian Cole. Adrian was 30, soft-spoken, thoughtful, and carrying a world of heaviness that his smile tried, but failed to hide. He had come to Eleanor months ago as a client after losing his job and going through a painful breakup. She was supposed to guide him through grief, but what neither of them realized was how much grief Eleanor herself was drowning in. Their conversations had started professionally, short, structured, predictable. But slowly, boundaries blurred. He started staying after sessions. She started listening longer. What began as comfort turned into connection. What turned into connection grew into danger, a danger both of them pretended not to see. And that was how the real midnight affair began, not with touch, not with romance, but with two lonely people finally feeling seen. Tonight, however, everything was different. Adrian had called her with urgency in his voice, asking if they could talk, really talk. He said it couldn't wait until morning. So now, as the clock blinked 11:58 p.m., Eleanor found herself pacing the living room, rehearsing explanations she wasn't sure she wanted to give. The soft knock on the door was barely audible, but it echoed through her chest. She hesitated for 3 long seconds before opening it. Adrian stood there, rain soaking through his jacket, hair dripping, breath uneven, not from running, but from something deeper. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. Eleanor stepped aside. The moment the door closed, a heavy silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy with everything they'd been avoiding. "Adrian, what happened?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked at her in a way he'd never looked before. Not lost, not confused, just certain. "I can't keep doing this," he said. Her heart froze. "Doing what?" "Pretending this is nothing." Eleanor's breath caught. She felt heat rise in her chest, fear and longing clashing like fire and water. "Adrian—" "No," he whispered, stepping closer. "I need to say it. Even if it ruins everything. Even if you never want to see me again." His voice broke. "I'm in love with you." The words felt like a match dropped into gasoline. Eleanor stepped back, her mind spiraling. She had known. Of course she had. But hearing it out loud made everything real. Too real. "Adrian, you can't," she whispered. "You shouldn't." "I know." His eyes glistened. "Believe me, I've tried to stop it. I've tried to pull away, but every time I do, you look at me like I matter, like I'm not invisible. You don't know what that does to someone who's been abandoned his whole life." Eleanor's chest tightened painfully. She closed her eyes. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was confused, that this was just emotional dependency. But deep inside, she knew she had crossed her own lines, lines she had drawn for others, not herself. "Adrian," she began again, voice trembling, "I care about you. You know I do, but this—" she gestured helplessly between them. "This isn't fair to you, and it's not right for me." "Not right," he whispered odd, or not aloud. Eleanor looked away. She couldn't answer. He stepped closer again, his voice softer this time. Tell me you don't feel anything. Tell me I'm imagining it. Tell me I'm wrong, and I swear I'll walk away and you'll never hear from me again. Elena could feel her pulse in her throat, loud and undeniable. She opened her mouth, but no words came. And that silence said everything. Adrian exhaled shakily. I knew it! She felt the room closing in, walls tightening, her heart pounding with a mix of panic and longing she had buried for years. But before she could collect herself, before she could respond, the door suddenly unlocked. Eleanor's eyes shot wide. Daniel, home early! The key turned, the doorknob twisted, and the quiet world she had built with fragile excuses collapsed. Elena, Daniel called, stepping inside. His voice carried exhaustion but also frustration, the kind she had grown used to. His eyes lifted from his phone and froze the second he saw Adrian standing in the living room. Wet jacket, emotional face, midnight hour. It didn't take a genius to understand the wrong picture. What is this? Daniel demanded. Eleanor felt the panic surge. Daniel, wait! This isn't… Adrian stepped forward. It's my fault. I shouldn't have come. No, Daniel snapped. My wife is standing in our living room with another man at midnight. This is not okay. Daniel, stop, Eleanor said firmly, strength returning to her voice. You don't know what's happening. Then explain it, he insisted. Explain why this man is here instead of me. Silence again, heavy, accusing. But this time, Eleanor didn't crumble. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and looked at her husband with a calmness that surprised even her. He's here because I needed someone to talk to, she said. Someone who noticed when I was breaking. Someone who asked how I was. Someone who still saw me. Daniel's expression shifted, not anger, shock, maybe guilt. Eleanor, what are you saying? She swallowed hard. This moment was years overdue. I'm saying I've been lonely, Daniel. So lonely I didn't even recognize myself anymore. You stopped seeing me a long time ago. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but she continued. I'm not defending this, she said, gesturing toward Adrian, who stood frozen, guilt written all over him. I'm not saying it's right, but it didn't happen overnight. It happened over years of silence between us. The room fell quiet again. Rain pattered softly against the window, like the world outside was listening. Daniel's voice softened. Eleanor, why didn't you tell me? A sad smile touched her lips. I did. You just didn't hear me. Adrian took a step back, his face pale. I should go, he said quietly. Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes held a mix of love, regret, and apology. She nodded slowly. Maybe just for now. Adrian swallowed and nodded. He walked toward the door, pausing beside Daniel. I never wanted to ruin anything, he whispered. Daniel didn't respond. He simply stepped aside. The door closed gently behind Adrian, leaving a silence that felt heavier than before. Eleanor turned back to Daniel. Years of hurt floated between them, unspoken, unresolved, undeniable. Daniel finally spoke. Do you love him? The question cut through her. I care about him, she answered honestly, but what I feel isn't about him. It's about everything we lost. Daniel lowered his head. I never meant to drift away from you. I know, she said, but intentions don't erase the damage. They stood there facing each other, not as the polished couple people admired, but as two flawed human beings who had forgotten how to hold on to each other. What now? Daniel asked. Eleanor took a deep breath. Now we decide if we fix this or accept that we can't. Midnight ticked on, rain continued falling, and for the first time in years they began to talk. Not about the affair that never became physical, not about blame, but about the emptiness they had both fed without noticing. Hours passed, tears were shed. Truths that had been buried finally surfaced. And somewhere between confession and exhaustion, the first thread of understanding formed. Not forgiveness, not healing, but understanding. When dawn finally crept across the horizon, Eleanor looked out the same window she had stood by hours earlier. The city was waking up. Her life too would have to. She didn't know what her marriage would look like after this night. She didn't know if things could ever return to what they were, or if they even should. But she knew one thing with certainty: midnight had forced her to confront everything daylight had allowed her to ignore. And sometimes the beginning of healing doesn't come from love, or honesty, or even forgiveness. Sometimes it begins with the courage to stop hiding. As the sun rose, warm light filling the room, Elena whispered to herself, almost too softly to hear, "No more midnight affairs. Not with someone else. And not with my own silence."